Neil, spell irony. The last couple of weeks have been pretty cold. Not as cold, I know, as Canada land. Before you say it, Kelly, I saw you reaching for your laptop then. But nonetheless, they've been chilly for me anyway. And there was a part of me that was willing some warmer air, something that was not necessarily sub-zero, but I'm rather willing the sub-zero back again, because it was very interesting to photograph the ice and the light dusting of snow. But what have we got? Let me make an opening picture for today's show. Put your letters down. I'm using a Ricoh GR3. Yes, mpb.com have loaned me the camera that I hear so much about, and I think I've got a good picture to start with. It's it's a log pile, lots of logs here, and they must have recently been doing some forestry here. And so I've got a wonderful pattern. Now, the weirdest thing about the GR3 is that I don't look through an eyepiece. And I'm so used to looking through eyepieces. But here we go. This is a pattern picture. It sort of purrs as well, this camera. See? That's the loudest I can get it for you. I usually turn all sound effects off on cameras, but when I'm doing the Photowalk, you do need to hear when I'm making a picture. What were we? 1/25th, it's auto ISO, I think it was 100, f2.8. There's my log pile to start the day.
The Photowalk is brought to you by mpb.com. Quality used photo and video kit. Buy, sell, trade, create at mpb.com.
You find me in excited mood this week. I'm always excited, I know, to be walking with you on this show, but today I feel like a proverbial child in a sweet shop, or candy shop, of course, in parts of the world, which is ironic to use that word again, because as a child I was often an actual child in a sweet shop, in that my grandma and granddad, I think I've shared this with you before, they had a sweet shop on the Great Cambridge Road that led into London, and I'd go and stay with them now and then. I'd stay in the spare room, which doubled as a storeroom, really. It held the loose leaf tobacco, and it sometimes the day's takings. I think I was sleeping on those on the mattress, and the more exotic fries, chocolate, and the halfpenny chews, which I didn't pinch, I promise you. But there's a lingering smell of that room I think I'll take to the great tobacconist and confectioners in the sky one day when I meet my grandma and granddad again. But I digress. So soon into the show, Neil. Yes. But yes, I'm very excited. Because I shall be. Bit of time travel is involved in your imagination at this point. I shall be talking to, somebody who I've eulogized about over the last couple of weeks. I keep mentioning him, and I'm so looking forward to talking with Tim Booth, he of the Show of Hands book and project. And if you're listening to this show on the Friday when it comes out at 10 a.m, I'll be talking to Tim, and I'll be taking some of the questions that you may well have left in the Facebook group to ask as well, because Tim thought it might be a nice idea to open it up to you fine other listeners. So that's what I'll be doing. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to be going to London, to the Smoke, with my friend Giles, documentary mentor Penfound, on Monday. We're going to go to the Chris Killip exhibition. Sadly, the late Chris Killip, I would love to have spoken with him. He passed, it's only a couple of years ago actually, but yes, he's got a show on at the Photographers Gallery, where I hope to record some thoughts for us to share too about Chris and his work. And we're going to do a late Chinese New Year meal in Chinatown too. Don't tell the gym. On a Monday, Neil, it's not refeed day. Actually, today's PS comes from Chris Killip, and in case you're not so familiar, he documented the lives of those affected by the economic shifts in the north of England, quoting here, through the 70s and 80s, which made him one of the most influential British photographers, period. Then I'm excited too, because next weekend Mallee tree photographer Supremo Davis is coming down from the tippity-toppish of England to the sun-drenched shires of England land to spend Saturday jangling, as he would call it, and recording our photo walk together. He can teach me how to photograph trees, and I'll take him to the part of Berkshire left over from the Cold War, where the trees we'll make pictures of have an unusual radiance, if you know what I mean. I'll send him back with a ready brick glow. And then I'm excited today because, yes, we're walking together again, as I said, but also because I'm talking with a photographer whose images I grew up with. Certainly pictures I know now that I didn't know then that I would go on to know now, if you know what I mean. My guest is Arthur Meyerson, he of the Colour of Light book, he of the recognition for being known as one of America's finest colour photographers, he of the famous world of Coke photography adverts. He's been described, and I think it's fair to repeat, as the photographer's photographer.
Today on the Photowalk.
I think it's really, really important that when we make our pictures, we make pictures that truly are things that we're attracted to. It might be a light. It might be color. It might be this certain moment. It might be a combination of 2 or 3 of those. And when that happens, my God, then magic happens.
Stories of life told by photographers. And that little mission statement, if you like, it comes back a little bit later on in the show within a letter. And today, we are joined as you and I walk by Arthur Meyerson in this unique and special kind of photography show. Unique because you write it with your letters, your thoughts, your pictures that you share. And special because, well, we get to spend time together making our photos while those letters and guests, both present and past, inspire with thoughts about photography and life. It's a show about how making pictures has you feel, what it does for us and others around us. A gentle respite, as I've said the last couple of weeks, from the rough and tumble of the everyday. In the mailbag then, and on the show, an unexpected personal story turns into a project. You never know when the muse will strike. Also, trying to answer the ultimate question. Sounds like a hitchhiker's quote coming up, Neil. Not the one that involves the answer to the universe and all that. No, not that one. The photographic one, which is very personal for many. The ultimate question being, well, you'll have to wait and see. And I'm going to revisit with a shortened edit advice given by some very well-respected international photographers who may have an answer to the question that I just haven't shared for a moment. And I have a letter in the second half of the show that I think will go down as one of those pivotal letters of why I do this show. And it's an introduction to an organisation I didn't really know about. Not in any detail, if at all, but it's one I think you and I are going to get to know more in 2023. And it's a letter, a potent letter, that's exceptionally personal. One of those moments where you think, this is what photography is all about, or can be. Nearly 7 billion people on this planet are able to make a photograph with something and record life. So we are not walking alone, documenting our place and time in this world. So coffee, Garibaldi's, walking boots, and for one particular Australian listener today, hankies at the ready? Check. All right, let's walk. I'm trying to get an angle of this bridge over a stream here. Another one of my sketchbook images. Can't seem to... I don't want to drop... I have to hang off the edge of this bank here. I don't want to drop this camera in the drink. I don't want to drop any of my cameras in the drink, but can you imagine that, talking to MPB? You know that camera you've loaned me for the test drive? Yeah, the Ricoh GR3, the one that I talk a lot about, or at least guests talk to me a lot about. Well, it's currently residing at the bottom of a stream in Berkshire land. What can we do here? It's very sparse. It's a sparse day. It's a dank day. The sky, is that one of your famous bleu skies, Neil? Yes, it is. Let me put my letters down. I think it's very likely that I'll be putting this camera through its paces on my trip to London on Monday with Giles. Right, here we go. It is It's going to take some getting used to, focusing, touching the back screen and focusing, and not doing anything with the lens. It's such an easy camera to use, and I have to say, perfect companion for photo walks, because if you're sketchbooking, tiny camera, it's the smallest camera I think, I'm pretty sure, that I've ever used. I'm not sure I wouldn't be a little bit concerned about losing it. I'll keep looking in the bag. Is it in there? Is it in there? It's in my top pocket. But it's fabulous. And I'm looking forward to sharing pictures with you. Right, a few thank yous and quick comments before we dig into the mailbag for the first letter this week. Personal thanks, firstly, for those that helped make last week's episode. We had a sub-theme running. Alice Tomlinson was a wonderful guest. But we had a sub-theme that flowed through the show about making a 365, and I've started making mine because it was nice to coincide the start of a project with that number, episode 365. So I'll leave a link on the show page today to my 365. It's only just started. And it's on my personal website, which I thought was probably more appropriate than sharing it here, because this site really is more about your pictures. So I'll share that. And Gavin Perry from Australia Land, a comment left on the website from episode 362. Wild in the Water from Alex Ward. First of several mentions for Alex in the next few moments. I've just come back, says Gavin, from 5 weeks holiday in the UK and went on my first morning walk of the year with you in my ears. What a great episode. That's kind of you. Thank you. You had a grown man teary 3 times during this episode. Such a fabulous show. And annoyingly, Kodachrome. Oh, yes, we were talking about the movie Kodachrome. It's not available on Australian Netflix. Oh, good job probably, Gavin. That would be 4 teary moments. Or is it the dust? It's the dust, isn't it? It's Australian summer. It must be the dust that's making those teary moments. But, I do hope you get to catch up with that film, or you do get to view that film, because it's fabulous. And you'll have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, at least, teary moments. Right, letter. Let's start with Per Berkhaug in Norway land. Hello, Neil. Hope all is well in England land. I thought it was about time to write to you another letter about something I've been thinking about for a little while now. Per, I am on the edge of my seat. What could that be? Namely, who is our audience? I've been thinking a bit about that lately, and I'm hard-pressed to come up with a definite answer. Goodness, Per, it's like having my radio boss back. Who's our audience? He used to ask questions like that. And then he'd bring out a graph, and at which point I'd feign a nosebleed or something. I've got to go. I'll come back in about an hour, boss. I'd suspect that you as a podcaster has given that question some thought also. And I gather from the episodes that your guests that you talk with on the show have given that question some thought as well. But they, like yourself, mostly, are professionals. I'm talking about and thinking more in terms, says Per, of us happy, enthusiastic amateurs. I mean, given that photography is such a visual art, I believe we do have some kind of audience in mind when we take our pictures, even if it's only sort of subconsciously. It is a very fair point, actually, Per. When you take a picture, if you're an amateur, where is the picture going to be seen? Is that the question? It is the question I think you're asking. I mean, for me, as you say, as a professional, usually when I'm making pictures, apart from these, my sketchbook ones, I kind of know my audience. You're right. If I'm at a wedding, I'm hoping for the big tearjerker picture, I suppose. And if it's a commercial picture, I'm thinking where the picture's headed, where it's going to be shown. Is it part of a report? Is it going to be used on social media? Is it, I have to say, I once made some pictures which I thought, I'm sure from the brief, were destined to be used in this rather magnificent reception that this company had. But when they were ordered, I thought the sizes felt a bit, on the slight side. And when I turned up with them, because I delivered them, it turned out that they were destined for the bathroom. They were bathroom pictures. Fair dues. So yes, usually, bathroom pictures permitting, I have an idea of my audience. That's true. Of course, says Per, we're happy if any and all like our photos when we post them on social. And I think if that's the audience you're looking for, well, fine. And if the audience is closer to home, like family, that's fine as well. And even if the audience is ourselves only, that's also fine. But I do think we make our photos for an audience. And I know I've been thinking about this, even if I'm still having trouble reaching an answer. In the meantime, says Per, I'll continue making my pictures, always looking forward to walking with you, even if I seldom do that physically. And I've enclosed a picture I made recently during a photo ski hike. A ski hike? Whoa, that sounds, well, Per, I've seen how you ski hike. That means you must have thighs of iron. I'm assuming you're one of those cross-country skiers. I made this picture recently during a photo ski hike along Lake Thien at Filefjell. It was mid-December and quite cold, about 15 to 16 under. Oh, there's no way I think I'd be able to control the camera, no matter how automatic it is. Fortunately, no wind. And of course, I must mention to you, I'm on Vero and on Instagram. I'll link to you, don't worry, on the show page, so that we can go and enjoy your pictures. This letter pair sounds like it is, isn't it, really? It's the big, why am I making pictures question. Who is this for? Why am I making these pictures? Where do they go? Who are they for? And I need to recruit on your behalf, Per, my other listener, I think, for the answer here. Because my other listener, and perhaps I should extend this to other listener, far more equipped they are when it comes to nosebleed questions. So come on, help us out, help Per out, help me out on this particular one. Write to us, stories@photowalk.show. If you can answer that particular question, stories@photowalk.show. If you can send me a picture about where you're walking in the world, it doesn't have to necessarily be on a ski hike, then I'd love you to enclose that as well. In the meantime, I'm going to play a few moments from the final episode last year, the closing part of the show, where I played some short snips from a multitude of guests who'd appeared across the year of 22 about the why in their photographic lives. So really, this is kind of for Gavin, because I think this may have been one of those dusty eye moments, but perhaps also for Per as well, because here within these clips, which I've shortened from the much longer version that we had at the end of the year, here within these clips, I think there may be some answers to the question that you've posed, Per.
When you're opening your mind and you're kind of like looking at the little details of the world around you, and you're actually making your brain work a little bit and process more, it does seem like time slows down a little bit.
You raise the camera and you make a photograph of the thing that called out to your sensibility. And by doing this again and again, you define yourself, or you identify who you are to yourself. And that's the story of photography.
I definitely believe that if you make an image from a place of authenticity and honesty, that people really feel that and they come to it and it resonates with them.
Sometimes we can all get trapped in introspection and everything's always about us. And the thing that I love about photography is it gives me the opportunity to do the opposite of that. You know, I'm always looking out. I'm looking out at other people.
I think the best photographs come from an innate desire to create something that you feel that has nothing to do with commercializing it, has nothing to do with trying to get the most likes on social media. Like, the best photographs are the genuine photographs that your goal isn't for people to see it.
How do we live well? How do we make the most with the time that we have? And so that is really what drives my photography, is that question more than anything in the world. It's not about getting the cover. It's not about getting the shot. It's not about getting the lens. It's not about the gear. It's about that question. And I found the camera is a really good tool for that kind of inquiry.
I pick up my camera and everything else switches off, and I'm in the moment, and it's my safety blanket. It's what, I guess, calms me and just transports me into another world.
I think the camera and using it as that conduit to bind us more closely to the landscape. Wow, it's just, one can get quite tearful about it.
Interesting to hear those that we've enjoyed listening to on the show, finding an answer to the why. And I'm really looking forward to reading some thoughts that you may have on this. So write to me, please, at stories@photowalk.show, stories@photowalk.show. You know that sometimes when I get a bit agitated about the aircraft, a bit agitated, Neil, about the aircraft that flies, it's a particular part of Berkshire where I walk, and it flies above us while I'm trying to make the photo walk. I think I've just found, it's in the distance a bit, but I can see the windsock, and there's definitely a small airstrip there. I think I've found where it takes off from. I hope it's not going anywhere today. We'll be right underneath it. We had some nice response to the Alice Tomlinson episode from last week. Thank you so much for your kind thoughts about that particular programme. And John St. John Smith wrote in about it. He says, just finished listening to the latest pod this morning, the one with Alice. Listened up to the end of part 1 of the interview and the drive home from work, and continued as I had a coffee and breakfast in my favourite local indie coffee shop. That sounds a great way to close a day of working, doesn't it? I can't put my finger on it, but I love the interview, so interesting, and one I think I'm going to listen to again and again. What I did find interesting was the description by Alice of her time in St. Martin's, which, if you haven't heard that episode, is a real seat of learning when it comes to the arts in London. It's the place for many aspirational artists and designers and so on, and we talked about it on the programme. I had, says John, a very similar conversation with my parents last year, both of whom attended Wimbledon Art School, now called something else. It's in a group. With my stepfather moving on and graduating out of the Royal Academy. My word, what a talented family you have. The conversation started with them asking me if I knew who the late, great Jeff Beck was. It turned out that he was in the year below my parents at Wimbledon Art School, and so at some point, even though they didn't know him, they would have shared the cafeteria with him, I'm sure, and probably even sat on the same table at some point. My stepfather has been a project I started last year, and one that I might put in for the photo challenge. Ah, yes, the assignment, which I'll remind you of very, very shortly, because there's only just over a week now to get your pictures in for it. The project started out when I wrote to you back in 2021, Neil, discussing the Jason P. Howe 2-part interview and how he now documents the local goat herders in Spain where he lives, a far cry from the wars and conflict that he had been photographing. I thought I'd like to try something in West Dorset. Similar sort of thing, originally thinking of documenting those who thatch roofs. That's one of those jobs. It's if you can thatch a roof, I wouldn't like to say licensed to print, but I suspect there's not that many around still who do that. I watched a documentary on it a year or so ago, and in fact, I did. I did a wedding where one of the groomsmen was a thatcher, or is a thatcher, and he was explaining his job. Fascinating job. Both my folks are artists and taught art in schools and education before retiring. Over lockdown, Mum's health has sadly declined, not because of COVID-19, but through other reasons. Stepdad John went off the boil really at the time, painting in the studio, and life really has stood still for a couple of years. But then last year, Mum said to me that John had become like a man possessed in the studio and was painting non-stop every day. And it hit me. Here we are. My local project is right on my doorstep. John's not easy being around when he paints. No distractions, and it's full focus on the canvas, of course. So during my many visits to see them, I've gradually been taking my camera into the studio, initially on silent shutter and using my 35 f2 lens. I've always liked his work, but this time it's different. Wildly different. Abstract. Very abstract. But it really clicks with me what he's doing. So we now talk at length about his latest canvas. He believes that art should be viewed and the viewer makes the story. it loses its essence if it's over-explained, kind of like jazz in many respects. So here are some images. Work very much in progress, and it's not a rush by any stretch. It's the first time I've done anything documentary, and certainly more than my single standalone images that I usually post. So I'm going to pop some photographs. I'm going to pop some of your photographs on the show page today, John. Though they'll also be appearing on the assignment page for good reason. And you mentioned 2 photographers there, actually. So thank you, firstly, for your pictures and the story about your stepdad and your mum. But you mentioned the 2 photographers. They were Jason P. Howe and Alice Tomlinson. Now, really, at this point, when I play some inspiration, I could take some thoughts from either or, couldn't I? But I'm going to lean, I think, on Jason P. Howe here. And here's an excerpt from episode 246. Jason talking about how his photographic life changed from memory of our conversation. There were moments where he was covered in rubble from a bomb exploding outside his apartment when he was on assignment. Then there was the story about dating a woman in Colombia who turned out to be, unbeknownst to him, a deadly assassin, to life now on a hillside in a place in the world that he now calls home, where you don't have to sleep with your back to the window in case of a blast, where the stories he captures are just as important, just on an entirely different canvas, if I may use that phrase.
Now it's all about really sort of quality of life. Yeah. So we're endlessly being confronted by the destruction of the environment and nature, but it's still there and we can go out and be spending time in it. So I've chosen to live in it. I want to wake up every morning with clean air, with a beautiful view of mountains and forest, living somewhere where I feel safe and interacting with people whose values I like, which is why I love living in this sort of farming community with the shepherds and the goat herders and so on. Because my grandfather was a shepherd, and so I come from sort of a rural place in England, and I definitely am feeling a connection with it. I am working mainly, I'm choosing stories that I can get to within this region. So I recently shot an assignment about the home raising and slaughter of pigs.
Right.
I've done another one on Serrano ham which is a local speciality. And I'm really loving finding things like the last shepherd who still knows how to shear using scissors and the last man who knows how to plow using a mule. Yeah. And I believe these are small little fragments of history which are definitely worth photographing and preserving.
Jason P. Howe. And I'll link to that episode on the show page today. Now, I like vanishing point images, and this is a long path that leads to that to the aerodrome where that aircraft that I'm sure flies over us sometimes when I'm walking along the canal, which isn't so far away from here. I'm sure this leads to that this airstrip, but it's a very straight bush-lined path here. It's got a vanishing point, so let me grab my camera. I'm using the Ricoh GR3. Thank you mpb.com for the loan of this so I can test drive it. I'm going to write something on the website about it toward the end of my period with it, but at the moment I'm just enjoying using it. But I am struggling a little bit with the fact that I don't have to look through an eyepiece. It's just a habit thing. Here we go. I'm going to put the horizon right in the middle of the shot, so the vanishing point at the end of the path meets the sky that's just dissecting with it. And here we go. I hope that made sense. You'll see it. I'll put it on the show page today. See what you think. Pop that back in my A camera satchel. Just pick your letters back up again. The assignment that was mentioned a moment ago, I thought I'd use this opportunity to remind you of the assignment. There's a week and a bit to go where you can get your pictures in for this particular one. Then, of course, we have a February assignment to set for you, a new assignment, always in the first episode, Friday episode of the month. This one was set by Alex Ward, and if you'd like to get your pictures in for it, I'd love to receive them, along with the stories of where you walk when you're making these photo walks during this show as well. So this was set in episode 363 by Alexander Ward, the documentary project photographer. Shoot afresh, he said this is not an archival project, although immediately I know, I did say to John just a moment ago, the project that he's working on to get the pictures in from it. But it seems to me there's a kind of there's a blurring here, as I said, and I'm absolutely fine with that. But generally, no, this is a chance to go out and shoot afresh. Curate a series of 5 images that includes a wide opening and closing shot, plus at least one detail shot within, and create a narrative in your pictures that the reader will understand, that doesn't, and this is the tricky bit, that doesn't require text. Because this assignment is called Untitled. So you need to tell your story, your photo story, minus any words. This could be a project that involves people, doesn't have to though. So that's something that you can decide yourself. It's open to interpretation. Try to create something, said Alex, that has a part of you in it. This ideally may be something that you're connected with and to in some way or another. And that's why I thought John's story about his mum and his stepdad worked so well, because there's, on many levels, so much a part of him in this story. It's very, very personal, certainly. So good luck. You got a week and a bit to get the pictures in. I have a good few to upload, I know, and I will be. Right, guest, Arthur Meyerson. Some words from the LA Centre of Photography to introduce Arthur, since my words at the start of our chat, as you're about to find out, are somewhat less conventional. Arthur Meyerson is recognised as one of America's finest colour photographers. Over the years, this native Texan has travelled throughout the world creating award-winning advertising, corporate and editorial photographs, as well as an extensive body of fine art imagery. American Photo has selected him as one of the top photographers in advertising. In 2012, he published his highly acclaimed book, The Color of Light, a collection of some of his personal iconic color images from the past 4 decades. And the latest book, The Journey, tracing his photographic life, was released in 2017. I focused, if you'll pardon the pun, more on Color of Light. And it leaves an opportunity to come back and talk about The Journey another time. Oh, sneaky, Neil, I can see what you're doing there. And by the way, he also recorded an assignment, which is, I might use it at the start of next month, or it could be March's. Oh, you tease, Neil, you tease. One or t'other. Certainly. Watch this space, as they say in tabloid land. So here is part 1 of 2 parts you'll hear today. The incredible Arthur Meyerson, which sounds like the perfect title for a film, doesn't it? Dick Tracy Special. 3 words I didn't expect to start a conversation with, ever. But they are 3 words that, they could be responsible for you becoming a photographer. Well, sort of.
Yeah. I was very, very young, and I was like 5 years old, and I think my parents had given me this little toy camera, and it was a Dick Tracy Special. It did take 35 millimeter film, and in my last book, The Journey, the first picture in the book is a picture of me holding that little camera and it was a photograph my father took of me in the backyard. And not too long ago, I got online and I actually found a Dick Tracy Special. I think I paid almost $5 for it, but probably what my parents paid for it back then. In any case, I think we all have to start somewhere in photography. And as a piece of equipment, that was the first piece of equipment I ever owned photographically. I I progressed from there. But it was really fun to see this little camera again and to hold it. And I have a huge camera collection, old cameras, antiques, whatever. And last year I sold my studio, the building, and so everything's in storage, or I would actually pull that out and show you that little camera. But there's a picture of it in the book for anyone that's interested or has seen the book.
How many rolls of film have you put through the new Dick Tracy special?
Well, nowadays, I got to say, like most people, I've gone to digital. I was slow to go to digital. It was not an instantaneous thing for me. Yeah. I was a commercial photographer almost 40 plus years, almost 50 years. Yeah. And that kind of digital came into my life vision probably in the early 2000s, at least becoming familiar with it, knowing what it was and seeing it. But I was in no position to start shooting digitally. I had to understand it. I had to learn it. I had to take a few courses on how do you use the camera? What do you do with the images? Where are the images? But in my commercial world, it was a totally different thing. I couldn't switch gears just like that because my clients weren't ready for it. They didn't know what to do with it. So there was this time of transition going from film to digital, probably I'd say 2005 or so. Maybe that's when I started shooting commercial assignments digitally. And I pretty much have been a digital photographer ever since. That said, I still occasionally will shoot film. And even most recently, I did a photo tour workshop that I led in Japan with a friend of mine, George Novechi. And when I was in Japan, there was a medium format camera that I had come to covet, and I couldn't find it in the States. And you probably know it, the Plabel Machina. Nice. It's a 6x7, right? And it's a beautiful 2.25 camera that has an ascending and a descending bellows with a fixed lens. And the fixed lens is an 80 millimeter f2.8 Nikkor lens. And it's a very, very sharp piece of glass. Long story short, I just wanted to try shooting film again while I was on that trip. Now, I, of course, shot digital, but it was really fun to go back and test myself because contrary to just shooting endlessly with that particular camera, 2.25, you get 10 frames. That is a discipline. And one of the things that I talk to my students a lot about is the word discipline and how discipline has kind of gone out the window these days in digital. Digital's a wonderful medium. It's not the only medium, but it is a terrific medium. But it does have, I think, pluses and minuses. And discipline to me is a word that I try to reference and use with them and say, look, what if you only had 36 exposures and then that was it? And then you had to change film or you ran out or that was your last roll. My professional career was based on that type of thinking and that type of discipline. Not to mention that the majority of the work that I shot commercial was Kodachrome, 35 millimeter. And within that small little frame, you had to pack as much information in there as possible. Therefore, everything that resided within that rectangle, it had to count. Yeah. It had to be important. Yeah. There was no room for anything that wasn't necessary. Every square millimeter had to be utilized because a lot of times you didn't know if that photograph was going to be used size of a postage stamp
or a huge
billboard.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Does that discipline though? I mean, I remember speaking to a photographer, Vincent Laforet it was, who spoke about his father who was a photographer who would take a pair of scissors and he'd look at Vincent's work and he'd say, right, that pile is completely out of focus, and he'd drive the scissors through the negatives. He'd never be able to use them again. It was a discipline that led Vincent to be quite hard on himself, but an absolute perfectionist. And I wonder if you mean by discipline that you're also a perfectionist.
I've been accused of that. I have been accused of that. I have several very well-respected photographer friends who have stated as much. But the fact is, and I think the truth is, I think all of us who care about our work, and we all care about our work, or should to that degree, I think you do have to have a discipline, some type of guidelines. I'm not a person that adheres to a lot of rules, photographic rules, but some kind of discipline, I think, leads you forward.
Yes.
And it's a term, Neil, that actually came to me from one of my earliest mentor, Ernst Haas.
I wonder whether you'd say him. Yes.
Yeah, and Ernst was one of the first people to really, discuss that point with me about the importance of having a discipline and adhering to it, paying attention to it, and how it will affect your work going forward, or should.
He also persuaded you to, I'm going to describe it as getting rid of the golf bag, i.e. too many clubs, didn't he?
Well said, my friend. Right. I first met Ernst on a photo workshop tour that he was leading in Japan way back in the 80s. And on day one, I went out to shoot with my bag. I had 3 Nikon F2 motor drives. I had 7 lenses. I had a tripod. I had about anything else you could stuff in the bag. And about, an hour or two into the walk around, he came up to me and says, "How you doing?" And I said, "I'm exhausted." He said, "Why are you carrying all that stuff?" And I said, "Well, you never know what you're going to need." And he says, No. You need to unload. You need to go simple. Go with 2 bodies, maybe 2 lenses. Just work with that. And what you have, you have. And what you don't have, you don't have. You need to learn to work with the focal length or lenses that you have. And don't try to carry everything. Because it does come back, Neil, to one of the things that I pass on to people all the time, all my students at least, and that is the less you carry, the more you shoot, because the more you see, you're not pulled down by the weight of your backpack or camera bag. And it really and truly, as I've gotten older, I've gotten even more and more back to that, where I carry usually 1 body, maybe 2, and a fixed focal length lens or 2. Not opposed to zooms, but it's weight. And if I'm really trying to pare things down and go simple, that's what I've chosen to do.
I'm going to rewind a bit for a second. When I was growing up, I had no idea that what I was reading and seeing in Mum and Dad's Sunday supplements would someday be pictures I would come to know very, very well as historical memoirs from my youth, actually. And in some cases, I've gone on to speak to the photographers that made those pictures, which has been a real privilege. You have a similar story because the news shelf magazines very much shaped your early inspirations, didn't they?
Absolutely. I've been asked many times, what drew you to photography? I didn't grow up dreaming of being a photographer. No. Most photographers I knew growing up were jerks. I mean, I wasn't really impressed with the photographers that I'd grown up with. But that said, that could be in the portrait realm or the wedding realm or the guys that shot bar mitzvahs or occasions or whatever. No, none of that truly interested me. Where I traced my first roots to photography was the big picture magazines. Life magazine came as a weekly, and every issue I would run to the mailbox to get. And I never really read the stories. I looked at the photos, and there was something about the pictures that drew me in. And the same was true of National Geographic, and I think we took Look magazine for a while. But it was those big picture magazines, and I can remember how they affected me. Well, much later, when I went to the university, I was a journalism major, and I had to take a course called Photojournalism 101, which was basically that class where they teach you to process and print. And in the process of doing that, I got hooked. The first time I saw that print come up in the developing tray, and I know this is a story you've heard a million times, most people of my generation, at least, that did that, it was magic. Yeah. And I have totally been fixed on magic, always still am, but seeing that image come up on a blank piece of paper, that and just wanting to go out there and see, and I mean really see what's going on in the world, not just, getting from point A to B, but looking at things in between. That really intrigued me, and having a camera around my neck or on my shoulder encouraged me. It reminded me, hey, you're a photographer. Your job is to look, see, and record, and not just anything and everything. I think it's really, really important that when we make our pictures, we make pictures that truly are things that we're attracted to. It might be a light. It might be color. It might be this certain moment. It might be a combination of 2 or 3 of those. And when that happens, my God, then magic happens. That magic that we capture in the little black box, whether it's digital, whether it's film, whether it's a 10 type, whatever it is, whether it's your iPhone. And we have that and we take it back, and then we can go back and look at it. And then we can, if it meets the standards of a discipline, of editing, of really giving a damn about what it is that if it meets that, we're willing to even maybe sign that and say, yes, I'm proud of this. Yeah. Then you put it out there, and those that follow you, that are attracted to that will be your fan club. It won't be everyone, nor should it be, but those that come to the party to look at your photographs, study your pictures, enjoy those pictures. That's a wonderful thing, because I think the worst thing you can do is take pictures and leave them in the camera or leave them in your computer, and that's where they live. I think we're all doing this to share.
Well, on that note, talking about leaving pictures on your computer, or them only ever being on a computer or a screen that's only a couple of inches wide by long, what's your relationship with social media and how photography has changed?
My I have a Facebook page and I have an Instagram page as well. And I use them primarily to announce workshops that I've got coming up, or photo trips, or sometimes just to put images out there, some new, some old, some rediscovered, and just kind of see what the public out there says or thinks. I don't hang a whole lot of value on it, though. It's very, very interesting to me to see what people like. And I'm not just talking about my work. I'm talking about, I look at other photographers' works too, and I'll see some things that get just thousands of, likes, and I might scratch my head and go, why? The same thing with some of mine. I'll put some things out there and I have a pretty good idea of what is going to respond well and what's not. I think the more subtle the composition, the more likely it is it's going to be overlooked, not appreciated. Because you got to keep in mind, too, as I've learned to teach myself, that people are only viewing this for the most part on a very small screen, their phones, possibly on a laptop or computer. But for the most part, they're seeing it very small. And it's a very quick, instantaneous look. I like it, don't like it, and move on, which is pretty much how our society is today. People don't spend a whole lot of time pondering, work. If they would want to do that, I guess they go to a museum. But for the most part, social media doesn't do that.
Is it disenchanting to you in the same way that I have a kind of disenchantment that if we go back to the magazines and Mum and Dad's Sunday supplements and the Life magazine that you read, with the exception of things like Geo, many of the titles have either gone or have become celebrity driven.
Well, disenchant. Well, I like I said, I don't put a whole lot of stock in it. I think some of my really strongest images, and some of them newer things that I've been working on, I'll put out there just every now and then just to kind of see. And it won't necessarily get the response that I'd like it to get, but that's okay. Yeah. You can't make people see what they don't see, and that's fine. Yeah. I think it really and truly, for me, it's social media is just a means of really doing quick little snippets. People forget. It's like the news cycle. Everything is, important today and forgotten tomorrow. Yeah. What's important to me as a photographer and what I'm doing now are books. Yeah. And because I think books live on. Magazines were great and magazine assignments were great because, number one, you usually had the ability or the opportunity to do whatever you wanted to do photographically. You didn't have somebody standing over your shoulder saying, do this and that. A lot of times on commercial assignments, you would work with an art director or a designer who might be very hands-on. Although, fortunately, as my career went on, I got more and more opportunity to, hey, you're the photographer. That's why we hired you. We want your vision. You do it. But with work that was, done in magazines, it was out there for a week or a month and then gone. There's something about books, and I'm a big book lover. I have a huge collection of photography books, and always looking to see interesting work that other people are doing and trying to continue to produce and publish my own work with things that I'm continuing to work on. But I think that's a more important venue for where those images lie and where hopefully they'll be seen and appreciated.
Well, let's talk about color, but we'll start with talking about color by talking about black and white. Your trade is in color, but you learned from the great black and white photographers. I wonder how it was a recognized language still at the time when you started, that black and white was this, and I'll say it with air quotes, this recognized sort of serious side of photography.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And color wasn't so, but color spoke differently to you, didn't it?
It did. Let me back up just a second. I learned the craft of photography in black and white. I appreciated it. I loved it. I love black and white photography. Don't get me wrong. I have a wonderful collection of black and white photographs of friends and mentors and people that I've admired that hang on my walls. But at some point, there was something about color that spoke to me. Interestingly enough, I had this discussion also with Ernst Haas, and he equated it this way. He said, black and white and color, it's not that one is better than the other. He says you need to think of them as two different languages, and then you determine which one you want to speak. Now, there's a lot of photographers who consider themselves bilingual, and I think that's fine. I will occasionally take an image that I've done in color and transpose it to black and white just to look. And the point I get to is this. Black and white is subtraction. It's abstraction. Color is an addition. And whenever you add something to a photograph, it doesn't always work. It's, for me, much more difficult to make a color photograph that stands the test of time. And to that point, I would say you can take any great color photo and transpose it to black and white. And compositionally, I think it's still going to hold up, but it should be lacking. It should be missing something, because color, as the addition to it, should be part of that composition and should add something to it. And therefore, like I said, the structure of the image, I think, will still hold from color to black and white. Vice versa, if you took a black and white shot, a great Cartier-Bresson, Irving Penn, Richard, and transpose it to color, may not work at all. And that's because of that quality or that characteristic of subtracting an element from it. And so, again, it's not a matter of one being better than the other. It's a matter of, I think, how one prefers to work and choose which works best for them and what they hope to do with it.
I've heard you talk about the addition of color before. There's a few quotes that I've written in my notebook now under AM, and I'm not sure if we'll be able to go through them all, but there's one here that I did highlight. I've always felt that photography is a lot like fishing. Sometimes you go out and catch lots of fish, and some days not so many. Do you get frustrated on the days that the line comes back without the tension, as it were?
Yes, both when I'm fishing and both when I'm photographing. But there is a but.
Yeah.
And this is also another metaphor or relationship between photography and fishing, and that is, think about it. There's a lot of similarities. I mean, you have this very interesting, sophisticated equipment in both cases. You go to these fabulous places to make these photographs. And even if you throw the line out or raise the camera to your eye and it just doesn't work or it's not there, you're still, at least me, I'm still enjoying it.
Yeah.
Am I upset that I'm not getting anything? I got over that a long time ago, Neil. I think that one can make themselves miserable if they go out with the intent that today I've got to go out and I've got to get, a great photo, or today I've got to go out and I've got to, develop my style, which that's another thing we can talk about. I hate that term style, but in any case, no, I think that, or my feeling is that when I go out with no preconceptions. Yeah. I'll have my camera and I might select a certain lens for the day. Maybe it's a 35, maybe it's a 50, maybe it's a 28, maybe it's a zoom. But I'll have that, and I just want to, now again, discipline. I'm going to restrict myself. I'm going to have that camera and that lens, and that's what I'm going with. And I'm just going to walk. And by walking, maybe I see something, maybe I don't. Maybe I try a few things. We'll see. Maybe I see a quick thing over here, snap it, keep going. Maybe I see something over here and I spend an hour and a half with it and think I've got something. And the interesting thing is, then you come back and you download and you look at the stuff. And the thing I spent an hour and a half on, I can tell you 9 times out of 10, I probably should have spent another hour and a half, or maybe it wasn't there to begin with. And that one little quick snap thing, that's like, oh my God, that was something special. And I think all of this comes back to working with your gut feeling. Yeah. Sometimes it's not so much about thinking about it. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I think it's so much about intuition. Go with your gut, go with your intuition. Don't overthink things. And if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't happen, if you don't see it, no need, no reason to get upset or bothered. There's always tomorrow, and there's a chance for another picture. And besides, that said, good God, we've got so many pictures as it is out there anyway. All we need is one more, picture to look at that's so-so. That's where we have to have the discipline of our editing and really saying, is it all in there or not? And if there's a maybe, an if, then it probably goes into the no pile. The yes piles are very small, but those are the ones that we care the most about. Yeah. Those are the ones that we want to see in the book or hanging on the wall in the gallery.
Arthur Meyerson returns shortly. And yes, I found the airfield. Brimpton Airfield. Private property, CCTV, recording in operation. Warning, police dogs exercised here. Threatener. Although there's a style here which suggests I should be able to... The footpath continues here. Warning, active runway. Any more warning signs here? Let me get a picture. I've found the airfield that launches the aircraft that does all those practice acrobatics when I'm trying to do photo walks. Let's turn on the Ricoh, and here we go. What am I working on at the moment? Let's go f5.3. I always slightly underexpose my pictures. And there we go. A sketchbooker. I'm not sure I'm allowed in there though. I'm not sure there's much of a walk beyond that gate, or this gate here. But there is, I can see at the end of this path, there's an interesting building, a tumble-down building, which is far more interesting to photograph. Send your pictures, I'd love to hear from you, to stories@photowalk.show. As I said last week, it's great to know where you're walking as you listen to the programme. It's great to know where you live in the world, what you see, the canvas that you work within. 2,000 pixels wide, please, for the pictures, or 2,500 as we're going to go to a slightly wider picture count soon. But the 2,000 ones will work just as well. And send them into stories@photowalk.show, stories@photowalk.show. And don't panic, because I know a few people have said, I don't know how to resize, Neil. What do you mean, optimize? You can send them in to me via Dropbox or something as they're full size, and I'll do all the lifting for you. Don't panic. Thank you to our extra milers, our patrons who walk and go the extra photo walk mile to support this show with a modest monthly or annual donation. Your generosity goes towards the costs of producing this weekly programme and keeps it here in the podcast sphere. For you every week, there's another show where I go the extra mile for you, a little like this now. It's an extra photo walk, really, and it's a mite more personal. because I share thoughts from my diary, my books, my inspirations. Plus, you get to hear additional parts of conversations, or in this week's case, exclusive conversations with guests. And we meet once a month online, you and I, to get excited about making pictures in a special Zoom meet. A whole other visual podcast of its own, really.
On this week's Extra Mile,
there's the concluding part of my conversation, which has only been aired on the Extra Mile with the podcaster, the artist, and the writer, Jeffrey Sidoris. We shoot the breeze for the best part of, it's 35 minutes or so, actually, in 2 parts. We have a chat about making stuff, being creative, and having all these amazing outlets.
I don't think it's ever been a better time to be a maker of any kind, whether you're a writer or an engineer who makes, or a painter, or like whatever it is. There are tools and platforms that not only make what you do more accessible, they allow what you do to be more accessible to an audience. And I think that's pretty fantastic.
And we talk about writing, about practicing it, keeping the writing muscle in your brain toned. Isn't that what you meant, Jeffrey?
Absolutely. And I've on again, off again done morning pages for years, where you just get up and do 3 to 5 pages just as a brain dump. First thing, before you have your coffee, before you have your breakfast, whatever it is that your morning routine is, before you do that, you get out of bed and you just write 3 pages.
You can become an extra miler by clicking on the support the show icon on the front of the website. My thanks to mpb.com for your support, who I used this week myself. I've done my winter spring clean out, and the last of the DSLRs have gone. I am now DSLR-less. The only mirrors in the house, well, they're the 2 that I have in my film cameras, granted. And the one in the bathroom that says nasty things like, you need some earlier nights.
For quality used and inspected photo and video kit with a 6-month guarantee upon what you buy, visit mpb.com.
One of the things I must mention about the Ricoh GR3 that really saved me on the first day I was using the camera was I got all excited, took it out, and then thought, I don't have an SD card in the camera. My cameras are usually loaded. Well, I'm used to it, really. They're all loaded with a card, one in, one out. But, having a camera just arrive, I didn't even think about that. But it has internal memory. So I was able to make some pictures, particularly for the 365 that I've started. I was able to make them on the internal memory. Now I've been taking part in a conversation thread with a student who's writing a project piece for her media degree on the power of the spoken word, and in particular what radio and podcasting brings to people, and ultimately the format of this program as well, since that's part of our conversation. I don't get asked very often to do things like this, but when I do, and I consider it, I'm greatly flattered to be asked, for starters. But when I do, and since the why and who has been mentioned already today in relation to picture making mainly, I have to say it's an exercise that's it's quite challenging for me, because often my answer to deep philosophical questions is just because it feels right to me, which I know sounds reasonably vacant and a bit shallow perhaps, but it is. I mean, often when somebody says, why do you do that? And I say, well, because it feels right, with a question mark at the end and an apologetic look on my face. I mean, take wedding photography. Let me, I'll get into this letter that I've got. Bear with, digressing slightly, but take wedding photography. It is not something I planned to do with my life. I did not wake up thinking, you know what I need to be? I want to be a wedding photographer. No, it wasn't in my life plan at all. No way. And I went not so long back, although it was prior to the pandemic. I still have trouble saying that word. I went to a 50th anniversary for the radio station that I work with, the national network that I was very fortunate, very privileged to have worked on. And there was a there was a broadcaster there, a presenter there, that was at the bar, and we exchanged some pleasantries. I hadn't seen him for a long time. Fairly well-known chap, in the UK at least. And he turned to me in a very sneery way. He said to me, "How did you get to be a wedding photographer?" Like it was some kind of, I don't know, some kind of thing that he couldn't quite see. Well, first of all, that he couldn't quite see me doing. And it did sound, the way it was posed, perhaps it's just the way it was received, I don't know, but that it was somehow beneath me. I'm being careful how I say that, although I'm a wedding photographer, so I feel I'm allowed to say that. And I remember answering the question. I think I fluffed around the answer, to be honest. I really didn't make a great job at answering him, when really all I should have said, I'm sure I was trying to find, was that it just feels right. Because I feel right when I'm doing it. Nothing, because I'm quite a soft old sausage, as you well know, nothing communicates honesty and vulnerability to me more authentically than conflict pictures. And frankly, I'm too afraid to go and make those. I'm probably too old now to start anyway. Or weddings, which I could do rather more safely. And it seems flippant, I know, in the extreme, to use those two genres in the same sentence, perhaps. And I want you to accept it for the intention that I mean. That inert, is that the right word? Fascination, genuine fascination with humanity. And I believe it comes through photographing weddings. I didn't know it would. I shot a few and thought, well, there we go, that's that done. But no, 960-something, 70-something-ish by the end of this year. Something clicked, quite literally, didn't it? But, sorry, I have digressed. But actually, in answer to that student's question about the podcast now, and why this podcast is as it is, or, again, I'm going to use the flattery word, why I'm genuinely flattered and moved by the privilege this program has brought by way of the letters I get to read and the friends I hope I get to make. And I'm looking at you now, and I genuinely mean that. Really, I should probably just send her, the student that is, this letter that I'm about to read as my answer, because this letter is so special on so many levels. It says everything about why the format of taking this show out for a walk with a camera to make pictures. It says everything about the why. It really does. It's from Randy Bullerwell, who's taken a risk, as he'll point out in many ways, to write this letter. Dear Neil, well, where do I begin? And full disclosure, this letter is a bold attempt, a risk-taking experience to further tell my story. My name is Randy Bullerwell, retired school teacher, counsellor, amateur photographer, and I'm another one of your Canada Land listeners, a Patreon member too. Thank you, Randy. Much appreciated. True to your mission statement of sorts, and I think it is actually. It is something that I think is a mission statement. True to your mission statement of sorts, stories of life told by photographers, I'm nervously delighted to respond to episode 302. Sobriety, PTSD, and me. That was the title of it. You don't need to be nervous, Randy. It's only me. It's only us. And I've listened to this episode now for a third time. I admire and appreciate the narratives of your two guests, Chris O'Sullivan and Rob Wiskin, and their words of wisdom in how photography has helped them cope with a disease of the mind, as you say. Without boring you wouldn't bore us, Randy, with chapters of my ebb and flow of life events. I'll be briefish. I'm 65 years old, recently entered the 34-year sobriety club, alcohol-free, from 1989. And I live with diagnosed depression and anxiety. I picked up photography in 2004, though, and things have never been better, in a very mindful and enriching way. I also took up hiking to counter weight gain, thoroughly enjoying coastal trails and seascape photo shoots of Nova Scotia, Canada and Aruba, where I spend almost 6 months a year escaping the winters of home. Oh, that sounds perfect. Where do I sign up for that? Living life one day at a time continues to bring beautiful surprises and wonderful life lessons. Relating to photography, I found 2014 being the year that found me in London, England, for a week on a facilitator's workshop, learning how to set up and conduct a workshop of our own via the photo voice method of introducing photography as a storytelling tool. I'll break away just for a second. I will link to Photo Voice on the show page today, and it does some, frankly, incredible work. And I only took about half an hour last night to have a search through. It got very late last night when I finally turned in, and it's something I'm going to labour over. Pore over is the better expression, the more positive expression. And I certainly want to talk to those behind the organisation as well. But anyway, Randy, back to your letter. Not 1 year later, I found myself submitting a proposal to voluntarily teach photography to children, to youth, and adults of a marginalised community of Aruba. With the success of this pilot project, I soon found myself networking with community members having connections to the Gambia. Life is a circle, one of my favourite places in the world, as you well know. In 2017, the year of my retirement, I had an opportunity to go to the Gambia, you lucky thing, to teach photography to youth for 9 whole weeks. A once-in-a-lifetime experience that I will cherish forever. Fast forward to 2023, I'm in my second year of teaching children photography and storytelling here in St. Nicholas, Aruba. I'm fully blessed to have been chosen to take this path, as it's a great way to give back to the community, while at the same time receiving refreshing lessons on learning about curiosity and how to play with camera in hand from the children themselves. As for other projects, I have a recent travelling photography exhibition in Nova Scotia titled Navigating a Depressive Episode, showcasing abstract work documenting 3.5 months of living through severe depression in 2016. Here I found my camera offering medicinal and therapeutic benefits that have now been incorporated into my life's routine, specifically during dawn hikes to both take on a new day and to further document my thoughts and feelings as mirrored by the ebb and flow of coast waters. As a result of these early morning walks and their ability to allow me to calibrate my emotional gauge, I'm near completion of self-publishing my first book, titled Intimate Dawn, a time of thoughtful respite. And there is a book, Randy. You know what I'm going to say now. I want to be at the front of the queue. I really do. I apologize. You don't need to apologize, but he does write, I apologize for such a long and meandering letter. However, I had this strong desire to write to you, offering my brief story, how photography and the miracle of dawn life has become a regular part of my one day at a time, life-enriching, therapeutic regime. Never dismissing, though, that medication too is an integral part of my living with depression and anxiety. Presently, to begin expanding my photographic abilities and to add variety to my personal and photographic growth and expanding portfolio, I've adopted your Photowalk model of image making. I've never thought of it as a model. I suppose in some ways it is, isn't it? A Photowalk model. Please find, sent via an accompanying WeTransfer email, some images of my destination from a recent hike in the dark, searching for the dawn and sunrise light of Conchi, the natural pool. Just an example of the seascape depicted in my latest book project. Hoping your day is filled with play and life lessons. Sincerely, Randy Bullerwell. Randy, thank you so much for an incredible, potent and levelling letter. I so appreciate your honesty. I really do. And the pictures, well, I put all 6 up because they do tell a story, don't they? They seem to jump from one to the other, to the other, to the other. Love the one with a huge splash. Those sort of oceanic pictures I absolutely adore. So thank you for them. I will put them on the show page. Now, usually I note down some words, some kind of response, but on this occasion I didn't. I thought, well, hey, let's see how I feel after reading the letter to you out loud. And well, I feel, as I say, flattered, privileged for your absolute honesty. I do. It's quite clear to me. I suppose it's quite clear to me why I make this show in this format when these sorts of letters come in, because it's all about trust, and that trust is important on this program. It's not just about me reading letters. It's the trust of listening to the letters being read, and the empathy that I know that you show when you hear them. And I suppose that there was a C. I think I'll just make a picture, because this is where I read your letter. I'm afraid it's not going to look like Aruba, and it's probably a mite cooler as well. But here we go. I'm going to take a picture. It's along the path. Let me turn the camera on. There we go. That's my sketchbook image from reading your letter. Let me just pick the letters off the floor again. So thank you. And usually I play some inspiration at this point as well from a former guest. But you know what? I think that from Randy Bullerwell was inspiration enough, don't you? Do you think he might be doing I think he's doing a circuit. He's turning in toward the aerodrome or the airfield. Not really an aerodrome, you'll see by the pictures that I made, but the airfield where I was. Or is he? No, he's flying away now. Thank you for your letters that you send in. And it was, Randy Bullerwell's there was it's a particular privilege to receive letters like that. If you'd like to send in your thoughts about what photography means to you, we did ask you to, there's a challenge about the why of photography, who you make your pictures for. I'm really looking forward to reading what you have to say about that. I really am. Send them to stories@photowalk.show, stories@photowalk.show. And if you can send in pictures too of where you are in the world, I'm always really genuinely thrilled to receive the pictures of where you are. It's a geographic blog for me when you do that. It really is. And if you find yourself in my part of the world, you know what? If you do find yourself in my part of the world, a few years back, Randy, I'm sure we'd have met up. I hope we would have done anyway. But if you find yourself in my part of the world, bring the pictures and the letter with you, and we can take a walk and make some pictures. You'll need to like early mornings though, and Barney. Yeah, because I know it's the third, possibly fourth week in a row where we've not walked with Barney. And it's not been planned like that. It's just the times when I've been able to make the programme. He's either been at his girlfriend's. He's there a lot these days. We need to have words. Or he's been off with Sam, or he's doing something. He's a busy diary, you know, that cockapoo has a busy diary. Right, part 2 of my conversation now with Arthur Meyerson. He is so admired for his commercial work. Though I do say that the line sometimes between personal and commercial is indeed fuzzed in the positive meaning of that. He'll be setting a forthcoming assignment which I'm really looking forward to as well. Possibly it'll be February's, maybe March's. I've got to have a meeting with myself about that. But here's part 2 of my conversation with Arthur Meyerson. I want to talk about advertising. Coca-Cola, the image is, well, they're really as editorial as advertorial, and I want to talk about the relationship between personal work and commercial work in a short while. I'm used to the famous Coke train or the trucks in commercials. I smiled, Arthur, exceptionally broadly when the elephant train delivery in Thailand photograph went before my eyes. Tell me about this project. I mean, you travelled the world to shoot the world of Coke.
I did. This was truly, truly fortunate. And let me just say this. As a commercial photographer, you were only as good as your client. And if you had a great client, then you would bust your behind to give them everything and more. And Coke and I had this very long-running relationship of 20 plus years, which was highly unusual in the world of photography. But they liked me and I liked them, and I was able to continue to produce. You couldn't just keep doing the same thing. It was kind of like, okay, Arthur, what do you want to do this year? What do you think we could do and I would come up with different scenarios that I thought, photographic things that I thought would help to highlight them, their brand, their product, and more importantly, what I love the most with the consumers. When I started with them, prior to when I started with them, they were using photographers and models and spending a fortune doing it. And they said, well, what would you do different if we hire you? And I said, I wouldn't use models. I mean, you're all over the world. Let's go around the world. Let's get real people. Let's put it in their hands and let's see what happens. And that's how it began. And it was very successful and very well received, not only by the consumers and everyone, but more importantly, by the people, the corporation, and they loved it. And we continued to have this long working relationship. What I wanted to do, though, what was important to me was not just putting it in the hands of real people, but I wanted to try to create images, use the term almost editorial. Well, that's what I wanted. I wanted these pictures to look like they were photos that could have been in National Geographic, because I shot for Geographic a couple of times. And the only difference is maybe this product was in the photo. I didn't want to just have the bottle front and center and in your face. I didn't think that was important. It was the most recognizable shape, the bottle. People knew that. People, if that red and white logo, people knew that. So I didn't think you needed to pound people over the head. The product sold itself. And so it gave me the opportunity to do what I wanted to do, is create situations, put it out there, and let the consumer, be it Budapest or, Tokyo or wherever we were, and let the local just have their moment and sit back. And I would just, either handheld, possibly with a tripod, if I was using maybe a very long lens to kind of create a look. I just let things happen.
Was there a cast of thousands on your shoot?
Very good question, Neil. A lot of commercial assignments could involve many, many people. When we did these, it was usually someone from the company, from Coke, myself and my assistant, one assistant, and maybe an art director or designer. As time went on, it was usually just three of us, myself, the Coke liaison, and my assistant, and less was more. It was so much simpler, and we weren't scaring people, because we might be driving down the road and I might see this, in the Philippines, and here's a guy with a push cart and a oxen pulling it. And I thought, oh my God, let's go talk to him. We get up, and before you knew it, we took the stuff off his cart. We had cases of Coke on there. I mean, it took some liberty, but the idea though was to show this product being seen everywhere, as it was. So much of the situations that we did were actually existed, and it was just a matter of, explaining to the people what we wanted to do, and just ignore us. Don't look at me. Don't give me a big smile. Just enjoy it. Talk to your people, work, whatever.
The scale of your pictures is something that I notice, and going within the Coca-Cola campaign, the scale of the picture made in Norway of the Coke truck. In where was it? In the town beginning with T. Tromsø,
Norway.
That's it. Yeah.
350 miles north of the Arctic Circle.
Cold.
And and Coke had their northernmost bottling plant in that city. And so they sent us there to get some type of a transportation photo. And what they had in mind was a Coke truck going over a bridge that went over a fjord, big landscape and everything. And as hard as I tried and looked, I couldn't, and scouted, I could not find that location. And we ended up down below the bridge with the idea that maybe I could shoot up. And in doing that, the problem was I couldn't see the truck or as much of it as I needed to see. And I just for a moment gazed across the fjord and saw that scene that was used in the photograph. It was like a tapestry of colorful little ticky-tacky houses.
Yeah.
And I thought, my God, let's put the truck over there. And it's the only red item that you see with the Coke logo on it. And so this was cell phone days. I think we were using walkie-talkies. So I had the guy, I was using, I think, a 300 millimeter lens, and I had him put himself on one of the roadways across the way. I used a 300 to compress and flatten the scene. And I wanted him small. I didn't think he needed to be big in the scene. I wanted it to be more about the overall geography or architecture on the hillside, and then this little red and white rectangle within it. And that was my idea. That was my plan. And the good news was I got exactly what I wanted. The bad news was the folks at Coke weren't excited about that. Their first thoughts were, the truck's too small. Nobody will know that's a Coke truck. And I said, guys, anybody can see that's not a Pepsi truck. You don't, they're not going to confuse. And they said, no, we think it should be bigger. And so it wasn't used initially, but later on, and this was actually even better, I thought, I got a call from them they wanted to use that photograph in the World of Coke in Atlanta, Georgia, where they have a huge, it's basically a museum to the company, and it's a fun place to go if you're ever there. They had one wall, though, that I was very honored, was all my photographs, maybe 12 or 15 selects.
Wow. And
that was one of them. Yeah. And in the end, I think they felt and agreed, yes, that picture is special. It's probably my favorite photograph from all those years of shooting, not just because of the story, but because, just the way the truck stands out. I've had people buy that as a fine art image, which I think is interesting, but yeah.
Advertising, and I want to talk about personal work, because your advertising work and your personal work, one of the most interesting things studying your pictures is that the line is very blurred between the two. Your advertising work could so easily be your personal work.
Best compliment I could have. And that's all I was trying to do. I didn't necessarily want to go out and just make a commercial image that looked like another commercial photograph. I wanted it to be the kind of situation that if I was just out and about, I would make this photo anyway. So it happens to have, this person holding a Coke in it, or it happens to have this, delivery guy here, whatever. I wanted to make those kind of photos, and I wanted to have fun doing it. I always felt that it was important to do what the client wanted, but I felt even more importantly that it was important to do what I wanted to do and give them both and let them see. Because so often somebody's sitting in an office in New York or Atlanta or Houston or wherever. They've never been to the location. They don't know what they're going to be dealing with. They're drawing a sketch or they're getting an idea in their head that wouldn't this be cool? Well, you get there and it's like, it's not like that at all. And I would say that's a great idea. We can try that, but let's be open to other things. And I would typically shoot other things as well as what was required. And sometimes I got to say that paid off big, because I remember once being sent to shoot the new building for a pharmaceutical company in Belgium. And we got there and it hadn't been built. Well, I couldn't just call up and say, hey guys, there's no building, now what? No, this is what a commercial photographer was paid to do, and you had to come up with a solution, and I created a solution that worked. especially when they found out that the building wasn't there. And they, of course, apologized. But I gave them an image that they could use. And that was it. So often it was, you were faced with these kind of things, and solving problems was very much a part of it, be it visual or literal.
The Color of Light was published, it's a decade ago now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So 2012.
It was 2012.
So for many photographers, it's the book that is the guiding light, if you forgive the photographic pun, for understanding colour. So, but it's work that celebrates your personal work, your personal photography, isn't it?
So going back to your previous question, I was always shooting for myself as well as for my client when I was out and about.
Yeah.
If there was any off time, I would go and photograph. If we were in whether it was an interesting place or not, we might have been in Cairo, or we might have been in some little town in USA.
Yeah.
It was always about I loved photographing. I started off photographing for myself before I became a commercial photographer. And it was very, very important to me to continue doing that throughout. And what I found late in my career was I have all these personal images that I've taken along the way that have never been published. And I wanted to put bookends around them. And thus, The Color of Light was born. And so it's a body of work that I would say there are images that are less about technique and more just about a pure passion for seeing and capturing what I saw. And so they might have been done while I was on a commercial assignment, but not for this assignment. They were just in my off time. And it came up, and I was extremely excited, happy, and proud of this book because it did what I wanted to do. It got that work seen. And as I said earlier, it's, I think, important that the work gets out there and gets seen in some fashion or form. So that was the idea behind Color of Light.
How important is personal work? I know you're going to say extremely, but I'll give you that opportunity.
I think it's the most important.
Is it?
Because it's the work that we're closest to. When I'm gone, I would like to think that, I'll be remembered for a picture or two, and hopefully they will be, from my personal work. I mentioned that I sold my studio building last year, and one of the beautiful things that came from that was my archive was acquired by the Briscoe Center in Austin, Texas. And the first thing they did, I wasn't even out of the building. It was like 2 days after the sale. They were there with a moving van, spending 2 days, basically taking all of my commercial work. So the commercial work has a place that it will continue to live on. And over time, as I get time, I'm still working, editing, and going through the personal work, which will also go to them. So in some way, shape, or form, I'm hoping both bodies of work will continue to be seen and appreciated.
I hope you won't be offended by this question, and it's going to be clumsy, whatever way I say it. But is there a sense of loss when you sell an archive?
No. No, there isn't. And I'm not offended. No, I was actually, I think photographers need to think about this. I think the worst thing you can do is if you have a body of work that you feel is important, is to leave it to your heirs to deal with. I think that's pretty selfish, to be honest. And I have some friends who I could argue that with. But no, I was looking and had been looking for a while to have a place to put the stuff and let it, quote unquote, live on however they do. It'll be taken care of. It'll be stored properly. They'll occasionally do exhibits, books, whatever. But no, I had no problem with it. And like I said, my goal between now and whenever I turn the lights out will be to try to get the personal work to them as well. But that's going to take some time.
Friends and personal work combined here for my next question. I know that Jay Mizell is a very important friend in your life. And actually, it was he who suggested you visit Morocco, wasn't it? I've seen your latest work.
Years ago, yes. Jay and I said, Ernst was always my first mentor.
Yeah.
I would have to say Jay would be the other, without a doubt. And Jay and I have had a very long, very close relationship that goes beyond photography and has for going on 40 plus years. And just talking the other day, as a matter of fact. But in any case, Yeah, we would talk about work. We'd show each other work. We would critique each other's work. And at some point, I think I asked him, I said, okay, look, if you could go anywhere, knowing that we're both into color, I said, where would you go? And just like that, he said, you got to go to Morocco, man. You got to go to Morocco. And I had a couple of situations come up. I tried to talk Coke into it. We never got there for Coke. Not that I know they drink it there, but in any case, I finally had the opportunity this past year through the Santa Fe workshops, who I teach workshops through. They asked if I would be willing to lead a trip to Morocco last March, and it was fabulous. There is a but, and the but about Morocco is it's tough. Morocco is a tough place to photograph because basically people don't like being photographed. So it's very much about how you work those situations and deal with people who don't particularly want to be photographed. And I had a dozen people on this trip, and I don't think any of them are professional, but they're all serious photographers, as are most of these people that go on these trips and take the workshops. And yeah, I think there were a lot of times where that became an issue. There were times when our Moroccan fixers, the guys that were with us, could help that along. And I would work that way. It's not my preferred way. And my preferred way really is to see it, take it, and go with it. Yeah. Or as I like to say, law of the Old West, shoot first and ask questions later. but that can lead to trouble. There were some shouting matches. There were some, hand signals thrown at us. But for the most part, I think it's really about respecting people and appreciating their thoughts, their feelings, their whatever it is. And I'd try to engage people. And when I engaged people, Neil, that made such a big difference. They would kind of let their guard down and, okay, yeah, you can photograph me.
It seems extraordinary to me that you don't consider yourself a technical photographer. Quote, I know just about enough to get what I need out of a camera. Do you think we can make it too complex? Do you think photographers are guilty of that?
Oh, yeah. I think digital certainly did that. Digital, created more bells and whistles, more sliders, more of this, Photoshop and Lightroom and whatever browser you choose. Those are wonderful tools. Yeah. But beyond that, it's up to the individual. I'll get people in my classes and I'll say, look, I'm not interested in your ability to do Photoshop or Lightroom techniques. I'm more interested in what you see and how you record it.
There is a picture of yours that, for me, and it's one that you've spoken about on, when you're doing talks, you've spoken on films about it, so I do apologize. I'm going to make you speak about it again. But sure. It's the very epitome of having a unique way of seeing. And you made this picture just down the road from where I live. It's a place that I've photographed on a number of occasions. Yet your picture has got history, location, weather, humour. Mine just shows 5,000 years of old stones against a blue sky. Stonehenge. Just where did that groundsman appear from in the rain? Because I think you sent your wife to go and get him.
The story, it's really a funny story. I had been in Europe. It was one of my first big shoots overseas. I'd been in Europe for about a month and a half, 2 months. My wife, I invited to come along because it was early on, and she, quote unquote, was my assistant. We took one. I said, okay, it's our last day. Got to go to Stonehenge. I want to go there. I want to make the photo that, that Paul Caponegro never made. I want to make the photo that Pete Turner never made. I had all these grand ideas that I'm going to make this great photo. And so the first thing was me driving in London, and then the outskirts. That in itself would have been a movie. But I got in so many roundabouts and couldn't get out. I was going in circles for. Finally, I just got spit out on the road.
We do like our roundabouts here.
You do, and listen, I've started to see them over here now. They make sense. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
But to the uninitiated rookie driving on the right side, that was a total cluster. I won't use the word, but it was anyway. we finally got there, and the entire time we were arguing over directions, but we got there. And as we got there, the sky clouded up and it started to rain. And I thought, oh no, this isn't good. And I said, we got to wait. And we waited and waited and waited. And it stopped raining, but it was still cloudy. And you know how you go through the kind of underground parkway there and you come out and there you are.
That's right.
And there it is.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
It's so little. I thought it was so much bigger. You know,
I know.
There it is.
I know.
And at that time, as I remember, Neil, it was taped off. You could only get as far as where I was standing when I made this photograph. And I thought, well, it's cloudy, it's overcast, I'll at least record it. And I began taking pictures, not paying attention to anything. And there was tourists on either side of me. And all of a sudden, I hear this humming noise, and out of the right corner of my eye is the gentleman the groundskeeper mowing the lawn. Yeah. And I'm thinking, oh God, I've waited. This is going to be it. A guy cutting the grass. No, I can't do this. And as he's coming into the frame and I'm still looking, I'm going, wait a minute. This is kind of funny. And I make the picture. And I make it again as he passes back the other way. And I think one more time. Now, all the while, I can hear the people over my shoulder going, he doesn't know it, but that fellow's in all of his photos. And I'm going, yes, I knew it. But in any case, the picture was used in a self-promotional ad when I got back. I really loved it. I saw the humor and I thought it was funny. And no, it wasn't what I had in mind. But again, I said going out with preconceptions is a better way to do it. And a greeting card company called me and wanted to use the picture. And they said, we'd like to use the picture. And I thought, well, I don't have a model release on this guy, but I'm thinking, he'll never see it. You know, he's in England. This is here. And I agreed to it. And I got they don't pay a lot for that. So I took the money and ran. About a year later, the mail comes to the studio and I see this envelope, beautiful stationery, Stonehenge monument, da-da-da-da. I'm thinking, God, what is this? Did I win a prize? And I open it up and it's a very formal letter. Oh, no. And it's, Dear Mr. Meyerson, I am so-and-so. I am the he had some great title, but groundskeeper of Stonehenge. Recently, my brother who lives in Connecticut, USA, saw a postcard and I'm going, oh my God, I'm going down. And and his last thing was, is there any way that I could possibly get a print of the photograph? Oh. And I thought, buddy, you're getting the best print I could make, which in those days was a dye transfer. Yeah. And I sent him a 16 by 20 dye transfer print, quite beautiful, actually, with my best wishes, thanks. And would you mind signing the release too, which he did. And there was a lesson to be learned here. I mean, all kidding aside, that's a bad way to do it. And like I said, that was very, very early on in my career. And anything that I look to publish for money, I always will get a release on. The books are considered more fine art, and I think that's a different type of animal. But in terms of commercial values, I just got very lucky with this gentleman and the fact that, you know, all he wanted was a print. And I just thought it was the proper thing to do, and I should have gotten a release.
There must be, I would imagine, some 5,000 years ago, there would be a lad that was putting those stones together that would say, hang on a minute, Arthur Meyerson, these aren't small stones at all. Would you like to come and try moving one of these? The journey. It's a good metaphor, isn't it? It's a book, but it's a good metaphor for you, your life, your love for pictures, isn't it?
Absolutely. When I completed The Color of Light, I knew I wanted to do another book, but I wanted to do something different. I had enough images to do A Color of Light 2, 3, and 4, but I thought, I don't want to be repetitive. There's so much more I want to say. I was lucky enough to have an interview. A dear friend of mine, a woman by the name of Ann Wilkes Tucker. Ann was the curator of photography at the Museum of Fine Arts here in Houston. Very, very well-known curator, nationally, internationally. She is at the top of the list, and she recently retired a few years ago. But before she did, she said, "What are you planning next?" And I said, "Well, I want to do a book. I just haven't landed on what I want to do." And she said, "Well, why don't you let me interview you and let's talk about it?" And we spent 3 days sitting together in my studio talking. We just turned on the recorder and talked. just like you and I are talking. Yeah. And she really started with, tell me about where it all began. Tell me about who your influences were. Tell me your process, la-di-da-di-da. And it rambled for 3 days. And I sent it, I had it transposed, I got it back. It was a gigantic manuscript. And I sent it to my designer and I said, see if you can make anything of this. Same gentleman that designed the first book. And he organized it in such a way that the interview, which appears at the front of the book, leads in and becomes the roadmap, the blueprint for what the book became, which was the interview, which is it's a look back at my roots, where I came from personally, into photography, the people that influenced me, my teaching, my commercial career, and then leads into a second section, which is called process. She asked me questions that were really interesting, that made me think, Neil. It made me think about where I'd been, why I did what I do, how I do what I do. And all of those became sort of like chapters. And then the last part was a thing called journeys, or selected journeys. And some of those were commercial and some of those were personal. And so the book really is a look back, and at the same time, I think it's kind of like a preview to looking forward. And it was nice to kind of trace where I'd been, where I am, and where I was going.
It feels like notes from a photographer.
I wanted it to. It's got a lot more dialogue or text than the Color of Light. Color of Light has a few essays or forward and a couple of other things. This one, I really had to spend time with writing. It really took me to sitting there typing and writing and reminiscing and thinking back. And it was really good to do that. I think it was important to do that. And I think the best thing is when I hear from other photographers and people that have got the book and seen it and continue to learn from it. That's what I wanted.
What is the thing that drives you to make pictures still? I mean, I've heard you describe yourself as a photoholic, and I think you definitely are.
I think it's a combination of a few things. I'm still curious about places. I still enjoy traveling. I've been to 90 countries in all 7 continents, and there's still places I haven't been and want to go. There's places I've been that I want to go back to. So I would say curiosity. I'd say I'm interested in people and travel and locations and how people live in this day and age, and roll that up into fascination with light, color, and a moment. I still get a charge out of making a picture when those things come together. I mean, if I see beautiful light, I can't help it. Oh my God, look at the light. Or if I see some incredible, crazy color thing going on, it's like, I'm like a kid in that respect, and I hope that part never changes. I think it's really important that all of us kind of keep this childlike sense of curiosity that keeps us going forward, looking, recording. And not everything you take is going to be great, but if you're there and you have your camera, you can record. You can decide later if it's going to make your greatest hits or not. The main thing is how bad it is if you're there and you don't have your camera. And I know a lot of people will say, well, I've got my iPhone, and it's like, I forget about my iPhone having a camera unless it rings. I mean, I forget that, it does more than that. And I've seen amazing photos taken with that. For me, I need to have a camera around my neck or on my shoulder to make those photographs, because by God, if I get something that I feel that strong about, that I'm that serious about, I want to be able to have the fidelity and quality of image that will allow me to make a print, whether it's postage stamp size or billboard size. So still love it. It's still fun. Not doing it to be miserable.
And my thanks to Arthur Meyerson for talking with us on the show. There's still bits of plates of ice that have remained here from the week that's just gone. I think we're due for some milder weather for the next 10 days or so. Not as tropical as Aruba, I have to say. But we're due for some nicer weather. Next week's Photowalk, I want to get out towards Stonehenge again, so perhaps next week we will. I'll link to Arthur today, of course, on the show page, and for those lucky enough to live close by him, he does mentor, and you'll find his contact details on his website. And for links to him and to Jason P. Howe and the other photographers that you've heard from or about today, socials and the websites mentioned, go to today's show page, which is episode 366 on photowalk.show. There's usually a plethora of rabbit holes to follow that leads you on to all sorts of places. I'll leave the links on the show page today. And if you want to, you can link straight from not from all, but from most podcast player apps on the link that's there. That one, just there. That's it. Scroll. Go down. No. Bit more. There we go. You can link through to the show page from there. Our playout song today is one of my favourite Anthony Lazzaro songs. Anthony Lazzaro. Neil, you do seem to like him. I do, I know. It's a fabulous voice. Quite haunting. So yes, one from Anthony. It's called Old Sweater. Sometimes I feel like a bit of an old sweater. Bit worn around the edges. But yeah, keep it in your cupboard, just in case it's useful. This week's postscript, though, is a thought. I did say at the start of the show it would be from Chris Killip, and it is. It's a thought, something he'd written, whose exhibition I can't wait to see on Monday with my good pal Giles. And it's a thought really about the fantastical world of picture making in many ways. He said, can memory ever be made real? Or is a photograph the closest we can come to sometimes making it seem real? Now that is the power of photography.
I am bright, like a sun. You were my nova on the run, and I float in a wake from midnight to daybreak. When the winter chill froze you to the bone, you could always find your way back home to your little shelter from the storm. And if you're feeling roughed up by the weather, you could always wear your whole sweater. It was lying there the whole time. Eyes, trials, slips and setbacks. Somehow I wish we could wind back the clock, back to those days before you got on that stupid plane. But when the winter chill freezes to the bone, you can always find your way back home to a little shelter from the storm. And if you're feeling roughed up by the weather, you can always wear your cold sweater. It's been waiting here all this time. But when the winter chill freezes to the bone, you can always find your way back home to a little shelter from the storm. And if you're feeling roughed up by the weather, you can always wear your cold sweater. It's been waiting here all this time.
Old Sweater from that nice Lazzaro chap. And that's it for this week. My thanks to Arthur Meyerson and all my guests and letter writers, and you for being here. And if today you've been moved in any way by what Arthur said or by what our writers wrote him with, I know I have, then perhaps you could help me in a small but vitally important way. It's one of those, if everyone really did this, it would help the show reach more ears things, which is not for the vanity of this project or this podcast, but for the support we're able to receive from our patron extra milers and people like mpb.com. If you could share this show, which is best done by going to the show page on photowalk.show. Look for the episode, which is easy to find, copy-paste that URL, and then pop it into your Facebook groups you might belong to, or Twitter, or any other socials. Photography groups, walkers groups, because it's surprising, well, not so surprising now, that we are getting some walking groups that follow us. Because generally, what do you do when you go out on a walk with good friends? You take a camera often and make pictures. Because whilst it's nice to have this best-kept secret between you and I and my other listener, I can do so much more for this community at large if folk know why we meet here of a Friday to talk about what a difference the simple act of making pictures does to our lives. On that note, the extra mile is out. It's there. It's in the air. And a reminder that this week, Jeffrey Sidoris is shooting the breeze with me. And also in that story is everywhere around us way, I record a portrait in audio terms of a chap I happened to meet when out and about, just spending time with my youngest. I'll play you that portrait on the extra mile. Final virtual fist bumps to Neil Ford, head of all that stuff that only works because he gave it a reboot. Emily Renier for your eyes in our Facebook group, and Andrea Gilpin, Chief of Staff on the Instagram and Ideas floor, to Artlist, to Epidemic for the music. And I look forward to photographing with you, hearing from you, and talking with you next time.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.